A moratorium on medical marijuana recommended by the Planning Board. Details on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Tuesday, January 29th, 2013. I'm Sarah Colvin. The people of Massachusetts voted in November to legalize the medical use of marijuana, but now that measure is leaving Bay State cities and towns and the State Department of Public Health with a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of legwork left to do. Barnstable's taking a proactive stance. Last night, the Planning Board met to discuss both a proposed medical marijuana overlay district and a moratorium on the establishment of dispensaries. Barnstable's Director of Growth Management, Joanne Miller-Bontich, talks about what's on the table for the Planning Board.
And the town have been faced with similar issues when a new land use is introduced that your zoning ordinance doesn't contemplate, such as cell towers and wind turbines. There needs to be created a place for them in the zoning ordinance, so the town has the power to regulate that. And that's this is actually brought forward, as everyone knows, by virtue of the passage of the ballot question 3 in the November elections. The process is that the Planning Board holds public hearings. The Planning Board makes a recommendation to the Town Council. It's the Town Council that will take final action on this, and that would also be a public hearing. So there's a lot of opportunity for the public to comment during the process. And I think that's it. If anybody has technical questions, we can certainly answer them, but we are here to listen.
Members of the Department of Public Health spoke about the issue at last weekend's Massachusetts Municipal Association conference, which Bontich attended.
The town attorney attended those sessions on Friday. That was run by the Massachusetts Municipal Association. And our understanding is that the Department of Public Health, which is the entity in the law that's required to develop the registration standards for all of the permissions given in the law, will be visiting, doing listening tour, listening to communities around the Commonwealth as they work to grapple, as Barnstable is, with the effects of the passage of this ballot question. But there's been no written guidance. The town attorney has been in contact with the Department of Public Health and the Attorney General's office throughout the process to be able to give us the best advice possible. But as everyone else is, we're just sort of waiting for the state to finish their work in this area.
Barnstable attorney Ruth Weil answered some questions for the board.
And then was there any comment or any discussion regarding the possibility that communities could vote not to have these districts?
Yes, there were the health director who represents Melrose, Reading, and Wakefield was in attendance, and those 3 communities have voted a ban on medical marijuana. In the written materials that Ms. Andres distributed, she indicated that there was some risk in a total ban. We don't know how the courts or even the Attorney General's office is going to review those. I think 2 out of 3 of those towns are towns. One, I think Melrose is a city. So the Attorney General is reviewing those bylaws. But even if they find them consistent with state law under the narrow parameters that the Attorney General's reviews ordinance, bylaws, pardon me, it could be subject to a court challenge. You know, on the other hand, the towns have home rule power, so it's a complicated issue. I think this is one lawyer, her best guidance was if you want to regulate it, it's better to do it in a particular district rather than a total ban. This was one lawyer's opinion.
The meeting included a public hearing, and residents did speak out with concerns.
There are 3 major hazards that I see that are not adequately addressed with this proposal. Number 1 is public safety within and surrounding this proposed district. Number 2 is the opportunity for fraud, and number 3 is the opportunity for abuse. This current proposal is inadequate in dealing with all 3. First of all, let's look at public safety. You couldn't have chosen a worse spot than the proposed parcels. Your plan calls for plunking a medical marijuana district next to, first, a residential area predominantly inhabited by senior citizens, and 2, next to Cape Cod Hospital. This proposed area is almost constantly awash in traffic with ambulances and patients moving through it. By the way, most of those patients are seniors. Where are the safeguards? There are none that can be instituted in this proposed location. Secondly, what about crime? There are plenty of substantiated data that says that crime does increase around these types of centers. States that were quick to implement legalization were hit the hardest. Montana's Attorney General reported 78% of its jurisdictions with medical marijuana centers saw an increase in crime. There's an opportunity for Barnstable to get this right. We need to examine the data and best practices of other states that have gone before us. Remember, there are 17 other states that have done this. There is no justification to rush this. It's irresponsible to Barnstable and Yarmouth residents and Cape residents at large that utilize the enormous resources in the areas associated with the
I
hospital.
really would like to make 3 points tonight. Medical marijuana does not come to us from the medical community. I think we have to be very honest about this. And unlike a cancer treatment center or an MRI facility, which makes sense to be in a medical area, a marijuana distribution facility does not need to be in a medical overlay district. And I think you need to be very clear about that. Number two, I think medical marijuana is a very questionable subject. The January 23rd Wall Street Journal article notes that a federal appeals court decision upheld the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency's position that marijuana is a dangerous, medically useless drug. I've included a copy of the article from just last week for you also. So in planning an appropriate location, 3 factors I think are really crucial. One is the traffic impact. So you've placed this in an area where you have to valet park at this point, and in areas you've actually removed a section in the center of it so that you've really left the area on Main Street and in some area with the hospital. Number 2, the impact on residential areas, including the bus stop that exists for Yarmouth down at one end of the area. And 3, the impact on property values. And I think you have to take into consideration, would any of you want to be living next door to this?
An attorney for Cape Cod Healthcare also took to the podium to discuss the issue.
Good evening. My name is Mike Scott. I'm an attorney with Nutter, McLennan & Fish. I'm here tonight on behalf of Cape Cod Healthcare. Cape Cod Healthcare, as you know, owns Cape Cod Hospital, which owns 50% of the land that's proposed for the district, the overlay district. We've already expressed our support for Town Council Article 2013-66 for the moratorium. We want to reiterate our support for that article tonight. We think that the moratorium will create some time for a more fulsome planning process to consider the potential impacts of the medical marijuana treatment centers, as well as decide where best to locate these facilities. We think also this planning process and the moratorium will benefit from the promulgated regulations from the Department of Public Health, and we'll gain some insight from some of the questions that they're dealing with and the insight they're getting from their hearing processes.
The Planning Board voted 5-0 in favor of the moratorium. The board's recommendation will now go to Town Council for the final say. Meanwhile, the public hearing on the proposed overlay district will be continued until February. For further information, you can visit the town's website, town.barnstable.ma.us. With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin.